Okay, we're here with Reagan Ross, who is go ahead, talk.
Yeah. Hi.
Give us your background if you don't mind.
Okay.
You're here at United Township.
Okay. Hi, my name is Reagan Ross. I have now going on my third year at United Township High School. I'm from Davenport, Iowa. I graduated from Davenport Central, then went on to Iowa State University, and this is my third year in education.
So you grew up here.
Yes, grew up here.
So what's it been like for you as an African American to grow up in the Quad Cities?
So
Any big deal or no?
Well, going to school, of course, obviously there's mostly students who are not of color. So I would usually be one or two persons of color in class. So that was the biggest thing that I've noticed. Even when I went to college, I went to Iowa State. And I've always been either one or two persons of color in class. As far as I got older, I started to recognize the differences that I do have because I am a person of color. Just when it comes to employment, when it comes to how people perceive me, that has been challenging at times because I always want to make sure that I give 110% because of the preconceived notions that some people do have. I felt like I always have to give a little bit more to prove myself. So that is the biggest thing with being a African American woman.
Really? So did you notice any problems, like just asking this in general, not saying you had or hadn't, problems with police or no or yes?
So I have not had any run-ins with police. I have gotten pulled over, and I've always been a little anxious when I have gotten pulled over. It would be simple as like a traffic violation or one of my lights being out. I haven't had a bad interaction with a police officer, but it does make me nervous. I do get a little bit of anxiety because of what we've seen going on with our people of color, with blacks, especially young black men. And so for me personally, no, I haven't experienced any issues with police officers, but it does make me anxious when I do get pulled over.
How about in terms of your career? Has there been any challenges or problems there?
As far as my career, I've been very vocal about the issues that the black community faces. One thing for myself is I just try to advocate for my students, all of my students. And as far as for myself, I haven't had too many challenges. My biggest challenge is just to make sure that my voice is being heard and advocating for my students. And so that's that.
Okay, and then talk about just other things in general with the Quad Cities. Just your social life and all that. How that's been affected? Do you think, or not? Or think it hasn't been?
My social life concerning race relations.
Yeah.
No, I keep a close knit of friends. My social life, as far as racial relations, the biggest thing for me is just making sure that when I'm teaching, that my students are aware of race relations and they understand the racial issues that our country and our community faces. One thing that I do wish, I know one of your questions was about the relationships between police and the black community. I haven't, to be honest, I only know one police officer, and that is my friend, because he is a close friend of mine. But other than that, I can't name a police officer by name, mostly because there is a lack of relationships within the black community. I believe that to foster that community, there needs to be more neighborhood policing. There needs to be police officers that are going to get to know the youth, the students, the families that are within those neighborhoods. I know my dad growing up, he would say if he got in trouble, the police officer would say, "Hey, I know your mom and dad." And I don't know if I see that a lot here. And that's something that I think will kind of foster that better relationship between the black community and police officers.
As far as student interaction, has that been pretty positive, or?
Student reaction. So currently, right now, my students, we talk about race within my classroom. We focus on civic awareness and social awareness. And one thing that we do is we'll ask the students how they feel about what's going on within our community and what's going on within the world, the racial unrest. How I believe the students are perceiving it is some students are confused, but other students are very aware of the differences that they have. What I try to do is make sure I come from a standpoint of being practical. So each student will be able to talk about how they feel, but at that point, we then will discuss it. I think it's important that I continue to keep a safe environment within my classroom so that students know that this is a safe space. They can talk about race and be able to foster through those differences that we all possess, but also be able to learn from it as well.
Then talk about your background and your job a little bit.
Right. So I currently work for IJAG, and it's a partnership between United Township. IJAG stands for Iowa Jobs for America's Graduates. It is a program that helps students to prepare after high school. So our main focus is to make sure they're employable. So we focus on employability skills. But within that, we also talk about civic awareness and social awareness. And we make sure that the students are aware about the government that they are around. So they're aware of their voting rights. They know what they need to do to prepare for an interview. But the other component about civic awareness is making sure that the students know who their government officials are. But currently we are working on a project called the Love Project, Lifting Our Voices for Equity. And so through that project, we've been able to talk about race relations. We've been able to talk about the differences that my students do face. Some of my students do struggle with talking about race. And I said, well, why do you think that is? And then when we have a conversation, I asked them if they ever talked about race, in other classes. And they said, no, not really. And so then I asked them, do you think it would be beneficial if we start to have these conversations more often? They said, yes, because if we talk about race and we talk about the differences that we do have, you might have better police officers, or we may have people who are in healthcare positions. They may not have these biases towards or preconceived notions about each other. And so through talking about race, the students have been able to know the differences between each other, but also be able to understand it. One of my students, will come up to me after class and talk to me like, hey, Mr. Ross, I'm struggling with this. And we'll have that open conversation. And I'll say, just as easy as you came to me, do you think that that's where it starts for us to have better race relations with each other? And he said, yes, a conversation. And so I really do try to advocate that for my students to make sure that they know that this is a space to where they can talk and they can talk about those difficult conversations.
So in general, do you think the Quad Cities is doing okay in terms of relations, or would you say just okay, or A to F? How would you rate it?
As far as race relations, I would say maybe a C+. There's a lot more that we can do. I believe, again, when it comes to police officers and having their relationship with the Black community, I think getting out there and getting to know the neighborhoods, going out there and getting to know the neighborhood, the families that are a part of those neighborhoods, but also maybe doing community events. I see in different states we'll do community-wide events to where you're able to, police officers will come and they're getting to know their communities. I think doing something like that would definitely help to foster that. I don't, you asked me earlier about police relationships. I don't know a police officer.
I don't either, actually.
Yeah,
other than the ones I know from work.
And I don't know, maybe if we ask, if it's not just me asking me as a person of color, but ask anybody if they know a police officer. And if someone does, then, are those police officers spending more time in those particular neighborhoods? And is there a lack in a different neighborhood? And I think now some students, especially my students of color, do have anxieties about police officers because they've seen in the media what has been going on. But if they understand that there is a person behind the badge, if they see that this police officer is a father too, if this police officer has maybe went to United Township too and played sports just like them and had that relationship, I think things would be a lot different. So that is one thing that I think that we could do better as far as policing in the Black community. And just in general, all kids should know a police officer and be able to have that relationship. When you're younger, kids say, oh, I want to grow up to be a police officer because they are supposed to serve and protect. But also I do believe that we can continue to have mentors, as police officers could be mentors for our students, but they also need to know who they are behind that badge and know that they are a human being. And so I think sometimes we don't get to know the community as much as we should.
Okay, thanks a lot, Reagan. That was very good. Thank you.
Yep.